So as you prepare your workstation, the one thing that is very critical is that you get rid of your electrostatic discharge. The best thing to do is to make sure that you touch the PC case or something metal before you actually handle your components. Today we're using a Gigabyte AMD 760 motherboard. It is compatible with the socket AM3 Plus. It is upgradable to 8 GB DDR3 memory. The first step in our build is to install the most fragile components that you have within your build. So please be gentle when you actually handle it out of the packaging. You're going to notice the pins, they can easily bend, so again, just be careful when you're placing it. The first thing that you're going to do is actually line it up to your motherboard. You're going to look for either a triangle or some type of arrow on the corner of your processor and on the corner of the motherboard. That's actually what you're going to need to line up. This is very simple, guys. It's exactly like building Legos. You can't force anything in. If you're finding yourself to do that, you may end up damaging your components. This is easy peasy. Just make sure that everything drops in to lock it in place. After that, you may want to just jiggle it, wiggle it just a little bit just to make sure it's securely locked. That way we can go ahead and apply our thermal paste and install the heatsink or cooling fan. All right, most processors come with thermal paste. In this case, we're actually using our own thermal paste that we had here in our studio, and we grabbed our Q-tip and put some thermal paste right on top of the CPU and spread it around. The recommended dosage is actually about a pea-size amount, and then you can spread it out the entire CPU, so that way it makes it primed and ready for the heatsink install. So wax on, wax off. As you're installing the heatsink or cooling fan, it's best to actually look for the power that's coming out of the heatsink and lining it up with the socket on the motherboard. It'll give you an idea of where to orient the cooling fan. Then you're going to want to identify the latches that are on each side, just match it below, and then click, presto, move on to the next part. Now we're moving on to memory. What we chose for this particular build is a Kingston HyperX 4 GB memory module. This is a DDR3 memory type and with speeds up to 1600 megahertz. If you remember from our board, our motherboard actually supports 8 GB. Installing the memory or RAM is pretty simple. On the pins themselves that you'll see at the bottom, look for the notch and then match the notch with the actual memory slot on the motherboard. Okay, that way it'll give you an idea of where to orient the actual memory when you're installing it. Then you're going to basically gently press down on the channel and you're going to hear the click of the RAM snapping in place. We're getting closer to installing the components into our PC case. We actually chose an Ultra X Blaster mid-tower case for our build. This tower comes with a 450-watt power supply. Not all PC cases come with a power supply, so make sure that when you're choosing a case, you keep that in mind. The framework of this ATX mid-tower case allows you to install 4 5.25 hard drives or optical drives, 1 additional 3.5 external drive, and 6 internal 3.5 drives on your ATX motherboard and compatible video card. As we get ready to install the hard drive, we chose a Western Digital 500 GB for our particular build. The one thing that you're going to notice here is that this is a toolless case, so installing it is going to be pretty simple. You're just going to remove the locking mechanism from one of the bottom of the bays and install the hard drive. You're going to line up the threaded holes or the threaded notches with the notches on the drive bay. Once you line it up, you secure the locking mechanism again and twist to make sure that it's firmly in place. All right, to install the optical drive, we're basically going to go in by the back and push out the drive bay door in the front. So you're going to put some firm pressure there and just pop it out. Once you have it popped out, then you're going to grab your optical drive and then slide in the DVD burner on the top drive bay. But right before you do that, you got to take out the securing mechanism that you have, then slide it in. Make sure that the threaded notches line up with the drive bay. Once you're able to do that, then you can secure the locking mechanism back with the drive bay. Then after that, you may just want to gently shake the optical drive to make sure it is secure and firmly in place. Alrighty, things are coming together in this build. We're getting ready to install the motherboard into the case. So right before we actually start doing that, we need to get the standoff screws and install them into the PC case. These standoff screws, very tiny but very important. The reason why is because they're going to keep the motherboard raised from the case, and this is going to prevent it from short-circuiting out or even worse, damaging the rest of your hardware. Next, we're going to install the I/O panel or the faceplate that comes with your motherboard. That's the one that we suggest to install, as it obviously came with your motherboard. One of the key things that you have to keep in mind is that when you are putting it against the actual PC case, just to keep the audio components facing down of the PC case. And again, just like Legos, you want to snap into place. And make sure it's firmly on. So that way, when you get your motherboard, you line everything up with the components. So once it's snapped into place, then you grab your motherboard, align it with the output, and then it should be aligned and flushed, and you gently press forward. As you can see, everything is lined up correctly. All the audio ports are there, the Ethernet ports, the USB ports, your DVI port, your monitor port, and your keyboard and mouse ports are all ready to go. Now we're ready to secure the motherboard. Grab a screw and start installing. Pick a corner. All right, everything's put into place. The motherboard, the hard drive, the optical drive, the power supply, computer, heatsink. Ta-da! We're done. All right, guys. Now you can play. Just kidding. So, the one thing that's left is actually connecting all the cables into the appropriate slots of the motherboard. Now, this can be the most tedious, time-consuming process within the entire build, but almost as crucial as every other step. However, the biggest tip that we can give you is that your manual is going to be your closest friend throughout this entire process. Every manufacturer is different, so make sure that you refer to your manual consistently and line up the slots with the correct number of pins that pertain to each particular cable. All right, so now it's time to power this baby up. First thing that you want to double check is to make sure that your power supply is off before you connect your AC cord. So once you do go through that little troubleshooting or checklist, once you go through that checklist, you connect your AC power cord, and then obviously get ready to, boom! We have liftoff, there's your green light, and there's the CC